From the city of brotherly love, this is Shark Bite Biz with David Strausser.
You just arrived to the season 3 finale of Shark Bite Biz. I'm your rock star wannabe host, David Strausser. This is your place to grow during complete global chaos. We've got a giveaway today, and you're going to hear about it at the very end of this episode, too, so be sure to listen to the very end. But before that, we're going to chat about the future of the workplace. First, though, remember, Android users, download the Shark Bite Biz app at the Google Play Store, where you can find every single episode of the show, the audio version, the video version. Everything is right there in the app. Plus, you can buy our fabulous coffee right there. It's seamless. You just click Coffee Store. Bam, you got it. But hey, if you're on, iOS or, you don't want to download the app, don't worry. You can get the best coffee known on earth that is roasted, sealed, and shipped within a 24-hour period over at deadhousecoffee.com. Use the code SHARK. You'll get 20% off, and we'll get all the proceeds to keep making the biggest and best show we possibly can. Now let's get back to today's show. We're going to be chatting with one of my beloved colleagues about what to expect in the workplace for 2022. We're going to be talking about employee satisfaction, collaboration, transfer of company culture, family life, management skills, and I think most importantly, management transparency. All the good stuff you'll need to have 2022 start off on the right foot. So, who do we have today? None other than Carl Britton Lewis. Carl currently serves as an ambassador for Vision33. Vision33 solves customer business challenges and delivers on the promise of technology. In this role, Carl takes a leadership role in all things proactive related to the constant improvement of the Vision33 customer experience. Carl is also the author of 2 books on SAP Business One, published by SAP Press, the SAP Business One User Guide. While working with Vision33, he has presented more than 500 webinars and is also the host of the Connected Enterprise podcast. The latest edition of the SAP Business One User Guide will be published and available for purchase in December of 2021. So hey, without further delay, let's bring Carl right on in here.
Business strategy.
Carl, welcome to Shark Bite Biz. You, my friend, you just became Shark Bait.
Thank you, David.
So for those of you that don't know or just totally skipped the intro and went right to the interview, Carl has a podcast called the Connected Enterprise Podcast, and I was just recently on his show. I hope it was a good experience for you, Carl.
I think it was.
So we have a tradition on this show. Very first question, tell us, what do you do for a living? How did you get there? Okay, tell us, all the secret special stuff that basically makes Carl.
Well, thanks, David. It's great to be with you. I would say, what makes Carl is, I've got a real varied past.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been a lot of places. I've had,
Explain varied, because varied could mean a lot of things.
I've lived in Turkey. I've lived in Puerto Rico. I've been in every one of the 50 states through my life. Worked in about 10 of them, and traveled, for the last 25 years all over North America. So
that's amazing. And as you just said that, because as all my listeners know, I just had back surgery, and I interviewed with Carl pre-surgery. So pre-surgery memory is a little foggy. But that does ring a bell. I remember us talking about, I know I talked about travel on my side, but I remember you talking a lot about travel and how it has also impacted your growth, your experiences and just how you view things altogether.
Absolutely. And on top of that, I really started out in life aiming to be a minister, which I did for about 20 years. But then I moved off into business, and I've worked, in not-for-profit businesses in the oil distributorship industry and in software now for the last 20 or so years. So it's given me a great perspective of different types of businesses and what they do and how they do it. And so my work with Vision33 was initially in kind of the support area of helping customers deal with their software.
But and how long ago was that?
I think I've been with Vision33 for 14 years, and I did basically the same job about 7 years prior to that. So give it, say 20 years, I've been kind of in this particular industry working. And doing That's so amazing. along the way, I kind of became a customer advocate. And so they came up with this fancy title of ambassador along the way. So it's, and as we grow as a company,
not just ambassador, but it is the chief SAP Business One ambassador.
I think that was my buddy Alex is trying to get me a C-level title without any C-level responsibility. So that worked out great.
Yeah, and Alex, he's referring to Alex Rooney, who has been on this show as well too. So I've got to ask, you do a couple things. You host a couple of different shows as part of your chief SAP Business One ambassador role. You have your Connected Enterprise podcast, which, for full clarity, we love transparency in the show. Both Carl and I, everybody here that's watching, unless it's your first time, my day job is with Vision33, and I occasionally bring on Vision33 guests because they are some of the brightest minds and some of the best people I know, and they shouldn't be excluded from the podcast just because, I work there. We're two separate entities. So I wanted to bring Carl on, and the Connected Enterprise is a Vision33 podcast. Why don't you talk really quick about your experience in starting the podcast, some of the things you've had to learn, how you've grown as a host? I'd love to hear your side of that.
Well, when the idea was first given to me about, I think it's going on 3 years now, this coming January, I was not necessarily totally receptive because it was something new, right? And I can say all of the new things that Vision33 has asked me to do, I've always been initially kind of reluctant, right? And so
did you even really understand what a podcast was at that time? Right now, 2021, everybody knows a podcast, okay? Back in 2017, did you really even fully understand the concept?
I'd listened to a few, but I didn't know really what, would go into it and, or what approach I would necessarily take, which had to grow on me. And so, my style is a little different than yours, David, is because I'm trying to ask questions and sort of listen to my guests talk about 80% of the time. And so that's been the style that I've wanted to. I really kind of want to hear from them a lot. And the goal was to talk to a lot of different people from a lot of different industries. Some of them might be my customers, some of them not.
For those of you that missed it, Carl just took a jab at me saying, David, you talk too much. No, but my show, I try to make it that interactive conversation that's Joe Rogan-esque, about 60-40, 70-30, in that range. It all depends on the guest. Sometimes you get a guest and it's like, I'm the one that's talking 60% of the time because you ask them a question and they give 1 or 2 word answers. So you've kind of got to go with the flow each time. But yes, it is a totally different style, and depending on what you like, both styles I think work, and I think both styles fit each other of how we do it.
Yeah, for sure. There's room for a lot of different things in podcasting, and the goal was to talk to people from a lot of different industries about what their current experience is, with sort of a hook on it about being, how does your company use technology to stay in touch with customers, with employees, with vendors. And through this whole adjustment of the last 2 years due to the pandemic, there's been a lot of creativity. So it's brought about a lot of interesting ideas that now, the whole audience is kind of listening to. I wonder what other people are doing. Maybe I should try that. Right. So it's been that sort of a goal. And as I said, some might be customers, but most of them and industry people that are kind of in the same group that I'm in at large. But now I'm reaching out way beyond that. And so soon I'll be interestingly talking to an individual, for instance, that they decided to put their whole life into a van, and they conduct their business. It's a PR business basically from a van. And
I thought you were going to talk. I thought you were going to say Tom Green.
No,
Tom Green's doing the van life right now.
Yep.
Doing a podcast, I believe too.
Yep. So they travel, to a new place. Like recently, it was Baja, California, and it's this young woman and her cat, right? And so that's been how she's gotten through the pandemic. And I found it a very interesting idea, and I want to hear from her. Okay, I know what you thought it was going to be. What was it really like?
Yeah, I'd be interested. Have you monetized it? Because podcasts are hard to monetize, unless you're getting, because they're hard to prove the actual metrics. And then just because you get 10,000 downloads, does that mean that 10,000 people listened? Which is one of the reasons why whenever I post a show, I don't know if we've ever seen it, but when I post the links, I put YouTube, because that's one of the easiest places for me to get metrics from. I put iTunes because, it's iTunes. Spotify, again, because it's Spotify. But then instead of put a Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Deezer, any of those other Stitcher, any of those other places out there, I ended up going with Verbal. And the reason I went with Verbal is because Audra Gold, the CEO and founder of Verbal, came on here and she's like, hey, the podcasting world is archaic and there's no true way to measure. How do you know those sites like Spotify that they're not just downloading it once and you're actually getting 10 million more listens than what, your stats show you on your hosting site? Because they're letting people listen to their copy, but they're not letting them listen off your main copy. And that's where Verbal changes that, because they're going of a more streaming method that would be more in line with what you get watching it on YouTube. You get what I'm saying? So it allows you to get those insights to know that, hey, are people not only just downloading the episode, but are they listening? Where are they stopping at? What parts are the big, the major listen to or the drop-off points? They're building all this advanced analytics around it. And that's why I chose to be one of their ambassadors, because I'm like, wow, this is amazing. This is what the podcast world needs, because it is growing. And, speaking of growth, you're also now with your show on YouTube as well, right?
Yeah, we posted, on YouTube from an audio and visual content perspective. And like yourself, a lot of different places just from an audio perspective. And it is hard to find out, what the total score is. Although that's monetizing it or anything of that nature hasn't ever really been the goal of this particular podcast. I would say because,
right. Your podcast is from Vision33, from the business. And I don't think they care monetizing it as much as Shark Bite Biz is looking for sponsors, as much as Shark Bite Biz would, because it does cost money to produce the podcast. I mean, especially I think at the quality that both your show, my show, that they're at. I mean, it doesn't come cheap.
No, there's a whole group of people that support me in this. So I just have to do what I do, and they take responsibility for all of the editing and the publication and those sorts of things and the scheduling, of when it gets published. I recruit my own guests and kind of keep them in line. But yeah, I think it's more of a goal of, from a content perspective of being a trusted advisor to our customer base and our industry and all of those sorts of things. So that's why we do it. And, just sort of building upon that. Role that
we just had a guest. We just had a guest that his name is Jeffrey Hahn. He wrote the book Breaking Bad News. Anybody out there listening, if you didn't see that episode, check it out. It's amazing. It's about the PR world, bad news, what to do if one of your employees says something and they're trying to cancel you. He talks about all that good stuff with us. You can go to his his link, and on his link, you can actually get free copies of his book. But I think, especially because he comes from the food industry, he'd be an amazing guest for your show, Carl.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. Have to check it out for sure.
So I got two quick questions for you, and then I want to start talking about the future of work. Okay. One is that on top of the podcast, you have done, I guess we can call it a show. Now, back when you started it, you probably wouldn't really call it a show as much as, hey, I'm just doing a live chat. But now that we look at what defines a vodcast or a podcast, I would say that your Wednesday web chats for SAP Business One is an actual podcast in and of itself.
Yeah, it's again, that was an idea that came from our good buddy Alex Rooney, and and he really wanted to have us do something on a regular routine basis for customers, right? From a kind of an educational 30-minute thing every week. And so that's really what Wednesday web chat was all about. And so I had to be a fairly, I don't like calling myself an expert because that implies something that I don't want to take responsibility for. But to a certain level of expertise was required in order to do something, show something, demonstrate something of value for that customer base. In those days, we probably had 150 customers, and now we have about 1,000. And so for many years, I did it every Wednesday. And to be honest with you, I got kind of tired of it after about 5 years. And so we cut it back to every other week. But there's probably approaching 600 episodes over the years that I've done. And so
is it hard to find content with that many episodes?
Well, sometimes it's repetitive, because with software versions change. So you're introducing things like new features, new benefits. But then, it kind of morphed into other areas, right? Where you're talking about more visionary things and about, a structure and, as the cloud gets introduced or new in-memory databases, you're talking about principles and technology advancement. So it's, there's an overlap with the podcast itself to some degree. But I never have cameras on with Wednesday web chat. That's one of the uniquenesses about it. It's really, we may have a demo, we may have a slide presentation. I typically have a guest. In the early days, I didn't have any guests. It was always just me. So it definitely has, modified through the years, and it has its own following. There are, consultants and customers, not necessarily Vision33 related people that use it all the time from an educational perspective. And it has, it's been an interesting part of one's career to be a part of.
Yeah. And then just the last other thing I wanted to talk about real quickly was the SAP Business One user guide. I mean, this is kind of cool because I can say Carl literally wrote the book on SAP Business One.
Yeah, I'm in first edition, which was published in 2017, December of 2017, so 5 years ago. It was based on a particular version of the software, version 9.2. And I recruited several other people to write particular chapters, but I was the only author listed on the book. That's just the way that the SAP Press wanted it. This time around, we updated the entire book recently to be compatible for version 10 and introduce a whole bunch of new features. I think it added about 100 pages, about 800 pages now for the book.
Wow.
And it should be published this December sometime. And
just in time for them to come out with version 10.1, right?
Exactly. It's always late by the time it comes out.
But that's actually fine because in the way that our world works is right about that time, that's when a lot of our customers are really going to be settling in on version 10. They're going to be really used to it. They're not going to want to upgrade. I mean, that's one of the nice things about Business One is that many of the other cloud solutions force you to upgrade when they say it's time to upgrade. You might have just gone live and you just learned how to do all this stuff a certain way, and bam, you're being forced to upgrade. Whereas with Business One, you as the client control when you're able to upgrade. And I always thought from a selling point of view, that was always a huge advantage for us because it's one of the instances of, look, you're not forcing the software to fit you. Okay. This software is going to fit your infrastructure. You probably don't even need 10.1. It probably doesn't even offer the, enhancements that are work that cost time, effort, or retraining people on different things. Maybe 10.2 is where you're going to find that value and it's time to upgrade. That's for you as a business side. The point is you're not forced to do it.
Yeah, there's good flexibility there to make it, fit your calendar as opposed to their calendar.
Especially on the IT side. That's one of the big things I stress against NetSuite. Oh, I can't stand NetSuite. They try to say, oh, Business One isn't real cloud. And I'm like, hey, we can run in the cloud. We can run on-prem. We have plenty of customers that are running hybrid because one location, maybe there's some place like Taiwan where the internet is very, very slow because of geopolitical reasons. So therefore, they're going to have an on-prem server in Taiwan and then overnight have that synchronized with the US server, which are actually running on our Amazon Web Services cloud. And that's a hybrid scenario that try to do that with NetSuite. It's not even possible.
Yeah, no, it's been, as I said, I've been working with this product since 2003. So I've forgotten a lot. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Hey, there you go. You went from wanting to be a church minister to now you're a B1 minister. So you still kept with the minister rolling away. I've got to call that out.
There's an element of that. That's for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about the main reason that I had you on the show, which is the future of work. We've been in this pandemic, I guess, we're probably about 2-3 months away by the time this show airs, of almost 2 full years of being in pandemic mode. Since this show has started, it's a running joke. I've been saying, hey, we're at the tail end of this pandemic and it just keeps going on and on and on. How is the office changing during this time period and what changes are going to be permanent?
Yeah, that's a target that nobody's hit perfectly yet, but I'll tell you some things that I've discovered in recent interviews. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are, closing satellite offices and they're downsizing their headquarters offices.
Right.
As a part of that, they're also eliminating some private offices, and some mm-hmm. large private offices are downsizing also. So, wow. That dream of the corner office is probably not as relevant any longer as it used to be.
No, it's more, give me the corner of my house.
Yeah.
I want the bay window.
There's a good portion of people that will remain remote going forward who didn't have that possibility previously. A lot of people will be in a hybrid mode. Mm-hmm. The insides of offices are changing. So they're taking a lot of the space that they're reducing from private offices and turning it into things like auditoriums mm-hmm. and multiple meeting rooms.
Wow.
That will fit whole departments and whole workplace audiences, like an auditorium, right? So that they can have more periodic and more powerful get-togethers on an infrequent basis. Because they've kind of learned how to do that. It's been forced on them from a virtual perspective, but they also see some power on that. Now, the downside, which there's always an upside and a downside, right?
Yeah.
Is that some people feel that it's going to limit their ability to collaborate and to sort of create things on the fly when they're not really with each other all the time. I think, I'm a little older, he says. So I really kind of like that, management by walking around. I can tell you my people that I have worked with and worked for love that feeling of I can just pop into your office, and give you something to do or ask your opinion about something. And it's a much easier way. I can tell you that one of the guys
instead of sending an email that can be misinterpreted, and next thing you know, you're having a call with HR.
Misinterpreted, or it's a lot easier to ignore me if you have to answer my virtual Teams call, right?
Right.
And so because I feel like sometimes some people that used to be available to me with just 3 steps across the hallway are now difficult to locate, right? In that sense.
Yeah, one other complaint to that same string of what you're saying is also to, especially with younger workers, that it's going to be harder for them to advance their careers. I've seen that on Forbes, I've seen it on HBR, and I've tweeted back on both of those articles. I've actually tweeted the actual writer, like, hey, this is false fears. If you really believe in that, or they also brought in office politics dynamics, stuff like that, then it's like, do you really want to be working in a place like that anyways? So I don't believe in it. I think there could be, because nothing can replace a personal touch. Personal touch is critical. It is important. Like you were just saying, you need to have a certain degree of that. I think what needs to happen is there needs to be a measuring stick as far as how much virtual versus how much in together. I could tell you, and I've said this many times on our show, the region that I manage, the Northeast region, has since day one, we've been a virtual team. We've always been virtual. We've spread out throughout the Northeast. And this is pre-pandemic. And we haven't had issues. I've had plenty of people that got promoted within the company to different roles. I have many people that got promoted within my region to management roles inside of my region. So it has not held them back. And that's where I think that it comes out of a false fear. And ultimately, it comes down to the corporate culture of whether or not these are actually issues and challenges with working remotely or not. What's your take on that? That's a lot.
Well, I think, it may be a false fear to some degree, but there's also a lot of people, and this is a concern that many of my friends in industry have. They're all seeing people moving in and out of their organizations at a more rapid pace than ever before. And part of it is, I think, the opportunity for advancement is seen as being elsewhere. Because as you were just saying, David, when people are away from one another, they have a sense of isolation, and they don't know, they can't perceive, they can't see the next step up. And so
that's where
they often are moving out to get up.
I have a rebuttal to that as well, too. And that is, we have an aging workforce, people that are probably, I'd say, within 5, maybe 10 years max older than me. And I'm 38. So I'd say 50 younger, maybe 45 is the bridge. I don't know. It's somewhere between 45 and 50. They're used to jumping. That generation above them, they worked those jobs for 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years. They were used to, being frowned upon. Oh, you worked at a job for a year and a half and then you left for someone else, whereas when you get, I think this, again, the line somewhere between 45 and 50 is where the job jumping. Now, usually a year, I think, is still a little early. It's somewhere between probably 2 to 3 years, I think, is the average time. And I think the pandemic has compressed it to where it's more 18 to 30 months on the time frame that someone's going to go to a workplace, do their job, get their experience, earn their money, and then take a much higher paying job elsewhere. I think that's what is being missed in the discussion, that job jumping has been a trend that has gone on throughout my whole life, and I'm an old millennial.
You're on to the right number there, which is about 18 months. In my own research, that's really what it looks like to me, is that, a college graduate gets out of college, they join a company, the company invests a lot in them, brings them up to speed, and many of them leave after 18 months to take what they learned, to take it someplace else. And they get more money by doing that than they would if they stayed and waited for a promotion. So companies have, and
oftentimes that jump is worth more than the promotion would have been anyways.
Exactly. So companies, this is one of the issues. The companies, in order to stop this sort of migration, because HR recruitment is a real hassle right now, right?
Yes.
So in order to get people to stay so that you can reduce the load on your HR department, you've got to start finding what are the incentives that are going to keep our people in their chairs, right? Keep them doing what they're doing. be sure we communicate what the opportunities are. And our HR departments have a need to modify their practices in terms of the ways they help people move forward. Right. And so that they give them a reason to stay. Also, I think the way that, businesses treat employees who are working remotely, there's a couple of issues here. Some employees, let's face it, a lot of distribution businesses, manufacturing businesses have a class of employee that really has to stay working in the warehouse, and can't get 3 days a week at home and 2 weeks in the office. How do you compensate those employees for not having the same amount of flexibility as other people do? Because they're moving around. They're moving around also. Right. So
that's an issue. That's a major issue there. And you bring up a super valid point, because there's those, I don't know if you want to call them frontline workers. They were during the pandemic. Don't know if they're still considered that now. Not my place to decide. But there were, you have a lot, whether it's the Amazon warehouse workers or grocery store people that have to show up physically. Even grocery store managers. I mean, they don't have the luxury, unless you're some VP or senior VP in that organization. You don't have the luxury of being able to work remote. So how is that compensated? And is it compensated with more incentives like financial incentives, stuff like that? And how's that going to then affect the cost of goods as well too, as they earn more? Because I am a fan of cheap goods.
Most of us are, but I think you've definitely seen it in that some of those essential workers, at least in the Pacific Northwest where I live, have gone from making like $12 an hour to $15, $16 an hour. They've welcomed in even 14-year-old employees in some of the fast food locations, right? Yeah, because of that. Because they can't find enough people. And so there is going to be a higher compensation requirement that inevitably is going to trickle downhill to all of us. But you know what? A lot of us that have been ordering food in, with a delivery charge are already paying a lot more for it than we used to. And providers of those meals are actually making less than they used to because of the fees from the delivery services. So there's still a lot of adjustment that's going to come there. But one idea that I've seen done with warehouses, David, is some of them that have gone from like a 5-day work week have gone to a 4-day work week.
4-day,
10 hours a day, 4 days a week. They have the same number of hours for the employee, but the employee always gets a 3-day weekend. Now, their office workers don't get that benefit, right? So it's kind of like, there's a bit of a trade-off there, but I think what they're trying to do is equalize.
I mean, 2 hours a day extra isn't the end of the world. In my job, just because of what we do, how it goes, time zones, all that stuff, it's frequent that I'm having calls at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. I wouldn't say 8 o'clock as much. 8 o'clock's more of we're in some sort of escalation and we're trying to find a problem. But for the most part, it's going to be in that time zone of 6, 7. So working 10 hours a day, to me, I don't think it's that much, but I'm also not out there doing the physical labor part. And that's where, maybe I have some learning that I would need to do on that part to get up to speed more.
Yeah. Well, some of us work, we have constituencies that are global, right? So we're used to having to do stuff even in the middle of the night, comparatively speaking. So just to meet time zone
I've done demos at 3 a.m., at 2 a.m. because we need people from Russia, the UK, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. This is the only time that it worked. And we had to do it then. My pre-sales guy, Mike White, always loved when I'm like, hey, Mike, we're going to be doing this at the 2:30 in the morning. Do you mind? Yeah. Oh yeah, David, no problem.
Right. behind the message he's
it's a 5 user deal, Mike. You'll love it, and
but I think the dynamic there is that the vast majority of people really just work in their own time zone in their own community and really want to work. That the golden shift is still the daytime shift, right? And that's when they want to work. So that's the dichotomy between the office worker and the essential worker, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah,
and the pandemic has definitely brought that into greater focus.
So how long do you think this pandemic paranoia will last? And, what do you think the ultimate impact on the office is going to be?
Well, there are some people that will and are already pushing for, like, I'm not paying attention to these mandates. I'm doing my own thing. But there's a whole nother class that are going to be reluctant to move back to the way it was. And so whether that's
and you see that's actually backed up in survey after survey after survey. There is a huge percentage of people that they're quitting if they're being told that they have to go back to the office full time. Now, there are some that will accept hybrid work. I don't know, though. I mean, since, I don't know, 2007 or so, I've always worked from home and I've been very responsible with it. If I was told that I had to work in a desk job, 3 days a week even, I would probably be quitting that job, to be truthful.
It's gonna take a lot of creativity on the part of employers, because you're gonna have some people that, okay, I'll come to the office 3 days a week, like you asked, but I have to have a private space to work in, right? So then you'll have, employers. If I'm the employer, I might say, you know what, I want everybody to be here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you can do whatever you like on Tuesday and Thursday. Well, that means I have to have space for all those people to be there at the same time, and all to feel safe going forward. That's going to be hard to accommodate in the same spaces we had before. So I think it's going to require,
And then aren't you paying? Then aren't you paying for a lot of unused space then as well too? Because then on those days that they're not going to the office, I mean, you're pretty much just vacant space.
So sometimes some of them are looking at it from the marketing department is always going to be here on Mondays and Wednesdays, and the sales team is always going to be here on whatever day and whatever day, so that they're taking advantage of the space in the office. But then it's rotating, right? So you can spread people out. And what the companies are doing that is they've got a cleaning crew that comes in at the end of the day on Monday and kind of wipes everything down, cleans everything up before the sales department gets there on Tuesday, right? A lot more attention to cleanliness and the environment, and the private offices that used to have a lot of personal pictures on the wall are now more sterile pictures, controlled by the company is controlled by the individual in the office. And so my old offices were always full of paraphernalia that I'd gathered from 20 years of doing this. That wouldn't exist any longer, right?
Because it's a rotating desk environment. But hey, Carl, I've had fun. You enjoyed this interview?
Yeah, for sure, buddy.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So the last question I got for you is, where can people find your podcast? Okay. And how can people digitally stalk you?
Well, they can definitely, find the podcast on YouTube on the Vision33 channel. Right. So easy enough to locate that. And the finding me, my email address. Right. So if you've got something that's kind of a professional topic you want to discuss or my opinion on, is just carl.lewis@vision33.com. And I'm easy to locate there. And I think it's at Twitter. If you really want to find me there, it's at Carl B. Lewis. Right.
Carl B.
Twitter,
Lewis.
that's my handle.
Carl loves tweets. I can tell. I'm going to tweet you out this episode.
I read them more than I send them. How's that?
Same here. I probably read a lot more tweets than I actually send tweets. But hey, Carl, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. I hope you had fun. And I hope this helps the Connected Enterprise get a whole new audience through our show.
And the same, David. Have a good day, buddy.
Yep. Thank you. You too. Cheers. Bye-bye. Wow, such an incredible chat with Carl, right? First, you all know the routine. If you found this interview helpful, if it sparked those warm and fuzzies, do me a favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. And if you really want to help us out, please share us out to your network. Everybody knows Shark Bite Biz is the greatest kept secret in the world of business. We achieve growth by you sharing us out to your friends, your colleagues, your family. Get us out there, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you dwell on the interwebs. We are very grateful for your support. Now let's get back to our actual rock star guest, Carl. Future of the workplace is something I'm in the midst of actually finishing an article for Forbes.com with. So hearing Carl talk about it, being he's an expert about this, really hit home for me. Not only did he confirm my beliefs, but I was surprised just how aligned we were with our thinking about the future. We both do hold our own podcasts and talk to a vast array of guests that are high-profile CEO-type individuals. So it sounds like Carl and myself are getting, the same clues, the same cues, I guess you could say, too, off these business leaders as we kind of hear a lot of them say a lot of the same stuff. A hybrid workplace is what the future is gearing up to be for now. Now, as many of my listeners know, I went to college late in life. When I went to college, they were preparing us for a digital transformation type world. But what they meant by that at that time was with working with global teams and your colleagues or clients that are across the globe. How can you effectively collaborate on a project with somebody that has an 18-hour time difference? There's going to be some give and take as far as when those meetings happen. And let's face it, back then, the digital collaboration tools were nowhere close to what they are today. Today, we're finding ourselves in that exact situation that they prepared us for. But instead of having our localized team in the cubicles next to us, they are remote collaborators. They're doing basically what we were trained to do during college, many of us at least, with working with people globally. We have to do with the teams that surround us and that we do need to get very granular with. Now, I do think in-person time is needed. I say warm and fuzzies each show. Like I just said it when I was saying about, hey, if this episode gave you warm and fuzzies, subscribe to this channel. It's hard to give people warm and fuzzies about yourself if you don't have FaceTime with them. In-person time is really critical to build a bond. Now, it's critical to build a bond, but it's not impossible to build a bond by doing it remote. Simple things like having your camera on, even if they don't, so that they can see your authenticity, so they can see that you're being genuine and that you're not rolling your eyes, okay? When you speak, will go miles into the impressions that's forming in their minds about you. You can still build solid relationships digitally. Hey, overall, incredible stuff, Carl. Please make sure you check out the Connected Enterprise podcast and also check out Carl's company, which happens to be my company too, Vision33.com. We are great people, great experience, and you get to work with people like Carl, like me, who brightest of the bright, to be able to help your business through your digital transformation. So, question of the day. Not really a question today, but it's going to be, hey, the first 3 people to email me, David@sharkbitebiz.com, will get an absolutely free brand new Shark Bite Biz coffee tumbler, plus a 2-pound bag of the coffee of your choice from deadhousecoffee.com. Remember, do you want to be on the show? If so, shoot out an email, interviews@sharkbitebiz.com. Please, if you're watching on YouTube, join the channel. You can become a baby shark for only $3 a month. And lastly, another plug. I know I just said it, but go to deadhousecoffee.com. Use code SHARK. Get 20% off your purchase. All the proceeds help us build the biggest, best show we possibly can. happy holidays, and we'll see you all in season 4. As you all know, I'm David Strausser. This is Shark Bite Biz, and we'll see you all next episode. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Shark Bite Biz. We hope you got some insightful info from this podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us through your favorite podcast app and visit us on the web at www.sharkbitebiz.com. How has business changed for you in the 20s? Email us at podcast@sharkbitebiz.com so you can join us and share your story.